and welcome back to the Great Pandemic Baking Challenge. Today we are working on egg tarts. I am Rachel Orlick, your trusty host. My cameraman is John Lozano.
Hey.
And my trusty assistant is Wyatt Earp. Say hello. Don't worry, he won't be touching anything. So today is tart and pie day. What we will be doing is Paul Hollywood's favorite, which is egg tarts. And we're gonna be going over how to make each one in just a second. Touch Wyatt, I'll wash my hands. So the first thing that we have to do is make the sweet pastry crust. What we need for that is flour, butter, sugar, an egg, and ground almonds. So the first thing that we're gonna do is stir the flour and the ground almonds together. All I did was take regular almonds, raw almonds, and put it through the blender. And it made this really nice fine powder. But if you have almond flour at home, that should work just fine. This is chilled and cubed butter, and we're just gonna add this and work it with our fingers until this mixture resembles breadcrumbs. Usually for this I use a pastry blender, but this recipe specifically says fingertips. If the butter in the mixture is too big, then it's going to melt through in the oven and you're gonna have holes in your pastry, which of course you don't want because that leads to the famous soggy bottom. If it's not incorporated well, then you don't get that flakiness. So I'm gonna give it a shot, but if this doesn't mix quickly, I'm gonna go back to my pastry blender. It does the job really quickly. Hopefully Paul approves. It's much more efficient and then the butter doesn't warm up with my hands. All right, so that looks really nicely incorporated. It does have that breadcrumb feel. So then what we do is stir in the sugar. So the final step is to incorporate the egg directly into the mixture to form a soft dough. No shells, thanks. I've never used egg in a pie dough before, or a tart dough, so this will be pretty interesting. It is pretty wet and sticky. Maybe that'll change as it gets better incorporated. So everything is well incorporated. It is a very soft dough. It's almost like a soft cookie dough. So then we tip this onto a floured surface. So then after forming it into a ball, smush it into a disc. We're gonna wrap this in cling film and put it in the fridge for 30 minutes. Can you? My hands are gross. This is not sticking to itself at all. So it's been 30 minutes and I've just taken the dough out of the refrigerator and it feels like it's really firmed up nicely. So what we are going to do on a floured work surface is roll it out so that we can cut 12 pieces of the pastry. I think I want my pastry cloth for this. So this is where the pastry cloth really comes in handy. So for bread, it wasn't great because it moved too much when I was kneading, but for pastry and rolling it out, it's really great because there's already flour on the cloth, so it won't stick as much. But then also I can carry it around instead of it getting stuck to the counter.
Cat hair?
No.
Sure.
No. I must have to roll it out really thin to get 12. This dough is just really soft. It's rare that dough sticks to this. So these are supposed to be 4.5 inches. I don't have a cookie cutter. He wanted to use the cat water bowl. So we are using a 4-inch round container, very pandemic chic. I can't even imagine how to get 12 out of this. I don't see how this is happening. So what I've decided is to do things a little off book. So I'm recombining all of the pastry dough. Hopefully I haven't destroyed the dough by doing that. I'm going to portion it into 12 equal sized portions and then roll those each into little balls and roll those out so that I know that they're all consistent. That way I know we get enough. 400 grams. 400 divided by 12. Math party over here, party over here, party over here, over here, here. 4, 3, 6, 4. Oh, man. Math. Divided by 12, so it's 4, 3, 36, 4, 0. Learn something in school. No, it's 3, 36, 4, 0. The most important thing here is consistencies. Basically 33 grams. You definitely get dinged for having inconsistencies. Basically 33 grams each. Basically 33 grams each. Math party over here. I feel like it's going to be a challenge to get there knowing how quickly these kind of soften up and become fragile. You know what we need? A tortilla press. That would be genius. I bet Paul wouldn't have thought to use a tortilla press. They definitely need to firm up again, so I'm going to put them in the freezer for a little to make sure they're nice and firm so we can get a nice even disc. So these only needed about 10 minutes in the freezer. So the way I roll them out is by starting at the center, pushing outward, and then I just go around the circle like the hands of a clock. So I just want you to notice how thin it is, that you can actually see the light through it. That's how thin pastry crust for a tart really needs to be, especially one of this size. Just evening out the dough on the sides so that we get nice even pastry all the way around. And I'm just going to make them a little more attractive by cutting off some of the excess pastry dough. Good idea.
What was that?
Good idea, honey. Another option here is to crimp the edges, but mine just weren't even enough to get a good, attractive crimp. It's way easier if you do it on the open side. All right, so I'm gonna put these in the fridge so that they can firm up while we make the custard. Did you eat some of the dough? Ew, that's disgusting. I question the messages you received as a child. We have our ingredients for our custard. That's eggs, sugar, and milk with a little sprinkling of nutmeg. What we need to do first is separate the egg yolks from the egg whites. All we're using are the yolks in this case. I'm heating up a pan on the stove with the milk on a very low heat so that it doesn't burn, and I'm gonna need to remember to go back and stir it on occasion to make sure it doesn't stick to the bottom. So I wanna beat the eggs and the sugar together until it's light and fluffy. Pale and creamy is actually what they say. So this looks pale and creamy to me. So because this is hot, I don't want to scramble the eggs. So I want to pour in just a little bit. And we start to temper the egg mixture. If I go too quickly or I pour in too much, then I'm going to scramble the eggs. With tempering eggs, there is a point at which you can just pour the rest of the milk in. I'm not quite sure what that is. So I'm just going to continue to pour it in slowly. So the directions say to mix while creating little bubbles. It's actually getting quite frothy. That was getting heavy, yeah. So now I want to transfer this back to a pouring vessel so that I can fill the egg tarts evenly. And now I sprinkle with nutmeg and then put in the oven for 25 minutes. So I'm gonna set the timer for 15 minutes. That way I'll know how they're cooking at that point. I may need to lower the oven temperature for the final 10 minutes. So we'll see how it goes. What I'm looking for is a slight doming. If it expands too much, that means that when it cools, it's going to fall. So wait around 25 minutes, we'll check them out. Bubbles. Some of them look really smooth. This is Preston. He was in the hospital this week, so he had an IV put in, hence his shaved legs. But he's doing so good. His superpower is the ability to appear hungry and then deny all food. He meows very loudly as we're trying to go to sleep, almost every night, and brings us a toy. It's very sweet and annoying. Okay, so these are now out of the oven. They've been slightly domed. Obviously I had some spillage, but overall they seem to look intact. So we're gonna let them cool for 30 minutes here on the counter in the tin before trying to remove them. I'm worried these are gonna end up tasting like a quiche. Alright, so they've been cooling in the tin for 30 minutes, and now we're gonna go ahead and remove one and taste it. Alright, so it looks like it's well baked. The bottom of it is golden brown, no soggy bottom here. So now all that's left is to take a picture and taste it. Wow, that's very silky. As you can see, it's holding together nicely. The pastry is nice and thin. All right. I thought it might taste like a frittata, but it doesn't. It tastes smooth and soft and sweet. I can definitely taste that hint of nutmeg on the top. It tastes really good, actually. John, you want to try it?
Heck yeah.
Stick that on top for you.
That is awesome. Good job.
Success. All right, so that is our bake today. Join us next week for week 5. Biscuits and cookies? I have to check on that one. Oh man, let me try that one again. Join us next week for week 5 when it's biscuit week, and we are going to be making twirls. Half of them are going to be covered in chocolate and half of them are going to be original. Make sure to subscribe so you always get notified when we have a new episode come out, and we look forward to seeing you again next week. Take care.
Good job.
Yeah. We're giving these away, so you can't put in the footage of like cat hair being in there. Don't do it. I previewed this before you put it online. I will know.